Is this a video on this time? Or
Yep, video's going.
it's going?
Yeah.
Seems doable. Yeah.
Don't trust me.
Need to confirm. Yeah.
Trust but verify. Was that their official slogan, or was that just some pop culture?
Trust but verify. What's that?
KGB, trust but verify.
Is that their slogan?
Well, that's what was always. I don't know if it was KGB or just like USSR in general.
Trust but verify.
Yeah.
Okay.
You never heard about
I
that
think you
before?
have more experience with that than me. Well, were you born in the USSR?
No, I was born in Canada, but
yeah, your parents were, right?
Parents were, yeah. Yeah, that was. I'm trying to. Was it in Russian? Very no praveri. Yeah, maybe that's it. Very no praveri.
Is confirm or verify?
Yeah. Basically, like literally trust but verify. Yeah. Which is a pretty silly modus operandi.
Are you still fairly fluent in Russian, or?
Yeah. Basically, I could live in Russia. I'd feel comfortable doing that.
You're fluent enough where you'd feel just comfortable with daily.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of stuff,
yeah,
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be like I'd be kind of silly with it, I guess. I mean, what I always say is like my Russian's frozen to like when I was 12 years old, basically. So it'd be like a, going on 30 man
talking like a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like my Japanese is like that too. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm like frozen at like 25 or something. And
Yeah. It's not a bad place to be frozen.
But I don't know. There's some things I feel like I should increase the sophistication or depth or something. Yeah.
How do you feel about who you are in Japanese versus who you are in English?
It's hard to align them because I mean there's so many weird things I can do in English that I can't really just like references and other.
But I mean, do you feel like it's still the same core person or being, or do you feel like it's like kind of fragmented?
It's always an interesting question. I feel it's basically the same person, but there's still a lot of nuance missing or sort of a subtlety missing in Japanese. Although sometimes I feel like I'm expressing it really well or even better than English sometimes, but other times I'm just like, I'm totally failing to, I'm sounding like a 12-year-old or like a even younger kid or something.
Yeah, if you can get the point across though, that's good. Yeah, I'm still trying to get to that level.
Doesn't always come easly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a big I think we were talking about this in some of the chats recently too. This came up where there's kind of a divide between people that are maybe focusing on the speaking and everyday life track versus people that are like taking a really reading and translation and kind of like kanji kind of focus. Because I met some people, and even some of the people that I initially thought were like really incredible at Japanese, and then they were doing like translations and reading these like really high level texts and everything, and then met up with them here in real life, and like it just seemed like they could like barely speak in a way that was even coherent or I've kind of heard this from friends and acquaintances too, where like even some of the most I guess like respected translators, like their everyday life Japanese maybe isn't actually that hot really, like they can hack it, I guess, if they sit down and bust out a book, but
Can you clear your throat?
Yes. Yeah,
you're welcome, listeners. Thank you.
I'm fighting off a cold here. I mean, it's just the weather is not particularly kind.
I hope you appreciate the fact that I asked him to do that rather than letting that go on.
I'm fighting. I was gonna do it when I finished my sentence.
Okay.
I'm fighting off a sinus infection and cold and who knows what else. Yeah,
I had like sore throat a bit as well. It mostly passed, but half my company's out sick right now.
Yeah, I never like fully collapse to the point where I'd like miss work, but I never make it unscathed
Yeah.
in any of these like seasonal changes where
Yeah.
it's like sinus or sore throat or like
Mm.
some something is always going wonky
Yeah.
increasingly.
Yeah.
I had an
Just
awful sinus infection last year that like seemed to just go on for months, and it was
mm,
just God, it was awful. Yeah. Hope fingers crossed it won't quite go there again this year, but
fingers crossed.
trying
Yeah.
to trying to stick in.
Just sticking on the language thing, I guess. Yeah, like growing up, I learned Russian and English simultaneously.
Yeah.
Um, I know, like I was kind of thinking about this earlier. So, in the immigrant community, there's kind of like two types of parents, I guess. There's the parents that are terrified of you losing your heritage and losing your mother tongue and whatnot. And those that like deliberately don't teach their kids their language because they want their kids
Just
to
wanna
like feel at
integrate,
home.
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think the latter might actually be better.
It's better.
Yeah.
My father tried to teach me Italian, and man, I was just too much of a shitty kid to take him seriously. I was just like, yeah, there's no. I mean, fair enough. Like, we weren't really in an area where it would have been usable in any way, but I was just beyond uninterested at the time, and I wish I had taken it more seriously and kind of done that. But it still would have been. I think it still would have been tricky because it's just
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it introduces a very, I don't know, like I almost want to say like schizophrenic.
Well, I already
like
I had that anyway, but
Yeah.
I feel like I mean, I don't know if the language would have been just another brick in that
yeah,
wall or whatever.
Yeah.
But
yeah, like yeah, my mom in particular was terrified of because they're like I went to like Russian school on Saturdays.
Oh,
which,
really? Okay,
yeah.
so they actually sent you to like a school
Well,
for it.
yeah, man. One more reason to resent my
Wow,
culture
yeah,
due
yeah.
to losing my Saturday mornings.
Yeah, wow.
Due to
So they're pretty.
yeah.
It's pretty serious. Yeah.
I mean, the school was like basically like community class or something. Like it was like barely academic, but it was literally.
But you're still
just,
getting lessons and stuff, right?
yeah, and still was like reading stuff and some cultural exposure and some grammatical stuff. It's all very light in hindsight, but yeah, I mean within that community there were kids my age, I guess, who would turn 12 and would stop speaking Russian, right? Like they would just start replying to their parents in English all the time. And for whatever reason, this was terrifying to my mom in particular.
That's such a hard battle to win, though, because like, I mean, it's just like even. I mean, my mother, speaks with a Australian accent, and growing up, I was like, speaking like her. I was just copying her until I went to preschool, and kind of got it like beaten out of me because everyone's like, "Why are you talking weird? Like, what are you saying?" Right?
Right.
So even a different accent isn't really like for little kids. Like even that's not really tolerable, much less like a different full other language or something, right? So I mean, it's a bit of a. It feels like a losing battle. I mean, I guess like some people can win it, but it's pretty rough, right?
I don't know what's winning it though. I mean, like, I mean, you almost should just fully integrate into your culture, I guess. I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't. I guess, I mean, this weekend I was at like a techno music festival, and everyone's ears were quite well tuned, and everyone was picking up on my accent. Every new person I met. Though some people don't, right? Some people just say like you have a Canadian accent, which I disagree with. But I didn't lose my accent. My parents didn't lose their accent either, and they say that that's kind of part of a like identity thing as well, where it's like you cling to your accent because you perceive it as like part of yourself,
like who you are.
Probably
true. Probably true.
It's weird how you can be like aware of those sorts of things, but not be able to let go of them at the same time, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, do you think they like should have tried to like adopt a Canadian accent or something? Like, what would that have even meant? I guess. I mean, sort of.
Yeah, what would it have meant, I guess. I would have hoped maybe it would have translated to like better integration with their, current peers.
Maybe, but
maybe not.
maybe not.
Maybe it wouldn't
Yeah.
have made much of a difference at all, right?
I think it's sort of just a culture as well. I mean, I don't know if it's only the accent. It's sort of probably equally kind of important.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like I was in high school and going through a pretty angsty phase, and basically I was pretty rude to my mom, and I was like, how is it that you've been like living in Canada for like 20 years and you like still can't speak English properly? And here I am 5 years into Japan.
5 years into Japan. Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, depends how generous and gracious the listener is to me, basically.
It never stops. I mean, there's just like every single, I mean, like I use some form of Japanese literally every day, whether it's, speaking or texting or writing or reading, and it just never stops. I mean, there's just like shocking little, chinks in your ship or gaps in your, like things that are just like, I was trying to think of the word for repair today,
right?
Which is like shuri.
No. Okay.
Well, see, so that's like fix, right? But it doesn't really mean repair, right? So like, there's like naosu and nauru for like, fix and get better. But it doesn't mean like if you've like, broken your watch or something, or, broken your, I don't know, bike or something.
Yeah, okay, that's where I've heard shuri before.
Yeah, because you don't really like fix your object, right?
Yeah,
so there's just so many things like that where you're like, there are like more specific to, like, like there's, I guess you can kind of like brute force things and they'll probably get the idea, but there's just so many specific words where you're just like, oh really, like I forgot that, or like what, what was that, like there's just things that so I'm constantly on the, translating back and forth all day, trying to often say things which would seem in theory very simple,
right?
But a lot of the time you're like, oh wait, is this actually what I'm trying to say, or am I committing some awful enormity, as they would say? That's another interesting thing. The word in English, enormity,
like enormous, basically.
Well, that's what you would think, but it actually means like an error.
Okay.
So like people that really, I mean, it's a bit of a generational thing, and like even in England now, I don't know how many people would be aware of this, but like the way people used to talk and use a lot of common words, especially in England, like there's this book called The King's English by a writer called Kingsley Amis, who's definitely worth reading if anyone's on the fence about checking him out. But it's just essentially, that's all it is. Like, it's just a book of him pointing out like usage errors.
Okay.
Which sounds boring as fuck, and you're like, how could this ever be entertaining to read? But he, like, literally everyone he just makes into some story where he's like pointing out how like the shifting use of the word has like fucked up the ability to express something.
Right.
So like another example he gives is infamy or infamous.
Where it becomes the same as famous, right?
Yeah. Or like, well, like what it would even mean now. I mean, it kind of means like
famous more in a bad way.
Well, yeah. So I think there's like a few steps in the deterioration.
Right.
So like now it almost means like just more famous than famous or something.
Or like flammable and inflammable.
Yeah. So, but before that, it did mean famous in a bad way.
Okay.
But that's actually wrong too.
Well. Interesting.
So the original meaning is like abominable. So, or like something like horrible, right?
Right.
So like if you describe someone as infamous, you're basically saying they're like, like a low value, I don't know, person with bad character.
But famous for that, or
no,
just no.
So it has nothing to do with actually being famous.
Okay.
So like because it comes from this infamy.
Okay.
So, it's just the adjective of infamy, which just means like, like poor moral
Okay.
character,
Interesting.
or having done something horribly
Right.
regrettable or something.
Yeah.
So he's giving examples where like he's saying like, there's headlines like infamous dancer, Sarah, whatever his blah blah blah. And he's like going by the logic of what that originally meant, like 40 years ago, like she would have like a libel case against that newspaper for describing her as infamous.
Right.
Because they're basically saying she's like,
A bad person.
a horrible person
Yeah.
who's, scum of society or something.
Right.
But now she's probably like, oh, it just sounds cool or something.
Right.
It's like some positive. So he's like, okay, well then that word is now kind of unusable because it's ambiguous and doesn't mean what it like actually means, I guess.
Yeah.
So the word is kind of technically ruined, I guess.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the argument he takes. I mean, whether that's true or not, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you could just say like immoral person or something egregious, right? Yeah. So there's kind of ways around it, but I guess you do lose the original word.
Yeah. Or like enormity again means like mistake or something.
Right.
It doesn't mean being huge or whatever.
Interesting.
But I guess in a bit of a feedback loop where it's like more people, like if more people start thinking infamous means famous in a bad way, then that's what it's going to mean, right? Because, like, so if you try to use it in the original way, people are going to be like, what? Or like, they're not really going to get what you're actually saying, even if it's technically correct. And I think that's a situation that is like increasingly, I guess just out of control. And like, I think he wrote this book in like, I don't know, 1996 or something. And that's sort of how he ends it, where he's like, he's kind of just, he's not taking it entirely seriously, but he's kind of just like, basically we're fucked, and like everything is going to become more and more ambiguous. Like words are going to just keep getting used in inaccurate ways until they just lose all meaning. And so previous texts are going to not make sense, because like people are going to think, if you read a writer that uses enormity, you think it means big, then you're not going to know what they're like talking about, right?
That's just language, basically, right? That's just always been happening.
So so I don't know. I don't think it's anything too avoidable or whatever. But I mean, he does pull up a crazy amount of examples of just things that make no sense, or like just other like weird things that I would like never have thought of before reading this. I'm like, oh shit, like really, but it's kind of
But yeah, so like I've noticed that I've heard similar for specifically for like older Japanese people basically use a different vocabulary. And I mean, I literally don't recognize the words they're using a lot of the time when I rarely talk with someone significantly older.
Yeah, they speak in a different way. And that's one of the friend that I was mentioning earlier, like he's really fluent with quite, I guess, like literary expressions and like quite classical expressions. But
this is the translator, right?
I mean, among other things.
Okay.
I don't know if I'll specify who he is.
Sure.
But yeah, I tried to. I remember he was here one time, and I was like hitting him up with like super recent slang and stuff, and kind of more, I guess, like edgy expressions, and I mean, it's just way out of his remit, I guess. And it's just too recent or slangy or whatever. So maybe a bit of a similar situation. But the Kingsley Amis book is interesting because he kind of takes the argument that America ruined English, which again, I mean, he's biased because he's British, and, very proud of it, but he's like, okay, even the phrase like English or like UK English, he's like, this is like the most absurd phrase. It's like saying French or something, which
we actually do say in Canada. Because, well, we say French, but
So I mean, that does happen. So again, I wouldn't say he's like necessarily correct, but so that's sort of his not so hidden argument is just like basically that America has been fucking up this language.
America's infamous.
America's infamous, yeah. America's infamous enormities have been, degrading the language. So he gives like it does get quite funny, man, because he gives examples of things that are being like headlines and like usages in the U.S. and like it gets really into the weeds, like, so like the word like marathon,
right?
Well, he's like the Americans have amputated this word and then like stitched it to there's like telethon, triathlon,
yeah.
But there's other things like telethon,
yep,
and like he says something like walkathon or like just other things,
yeah.
and he's like, these are like grotesque constructions that like make no sense and like don't even
make sense to me. I don't know.
I guess, but you're not even. It's not even like a root that like fawn is not like
it's
the
not
root of that word. It's it's a place in Greece or whatever, but it's not even like a root that like
it's
really,
not like a Latin root.
It's not like you can't just like
but you can
but so he's
do something about it, Kingsley.
So this is what he
wrote an angry book.
He wrote an angry book where he's like, these absurd thawns that the Americans are getting up to, and have nothing to do with either Greek or English, but they seem to keep producing them en masse or whatever. Interesting book. I mean, again, this is probably a book that like most people would be like, this sounds like the most boring, absurd book that would not be fun to read ever. But it's actually very entertaining, and just a lot of things you would like probably not have thought about, like where is this actually coming from, or like what does this actually mean, or whatever. So I definitely got a lot of value from this book. Again, it's sort of some of those things where he's like making an argument that like can't really win, but it's also shed some light on stuff that probably is like still going on,
right?
And there's probably still things which are changing in weird ways that.
Well, have you read like Instagram comments lately, or no? I don't know how much it's penetrated into like Twitter or something. But
well, I read both of them quite a lot every day. So certainly seeing things that would probably have horrified Kingsley Amos if he was still alive. But,
like what seems to be happening in online comments is it's like hip to affect like what's called AAVE, African American.
That's always been the case, man. It's always like there's a writer called Norman Mailer who wrote an essay about that, where he's like talking about language affectation in like, I don't know, like 1960 or something. It was pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Even then, it was just
just people appropriating like black slang and like, kind of registers and stuff. So I don't think that's anything new, really. It's always kind of been
interesting
going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's the main driver for like English slang,
was one of them. I wouldn't say it's the main one. That's always, I mean, that's a common argument, is that like black slang always ends up stolen into white slang. So it's like a trickle down or, appropriation. But it's not the only direction.
It goes like black guys, gay guys, white females.
Well, there's, exactly right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's that, highway, but then like, where else would you get like management consulting or like, I don't know, like any of these like PMC kind of terms, or like emotional labor? Like the black community certainly did not invent that one.
They did not.
So I mean, so these things are coming from all over the place.
That's coming from a very beige and gray boardroom. You know exactly the color I'm talking about.
So it's not just a one way, but then these things do end up all over the place. So it's not just like a one way. I don't think slang is like a one way street, or like trickle down or appropriation. I mean, everything's like flipping around and getting used and misused and turned into athons and everything, slang-athons, and
Slang accounts.
marathons and whatever else the fuck it. Yeah.
Kind of in that vein, so an interesting feature of Japanese language, which maybe a lot of people are familiar with, but they've so there's like the 3 writing systems. There's hiragana, katakana, and kanji, right? Hiragana and katakana being phonetic ones, just catching the listener up if it's relevant. But katakana being actually, I believe you told me, the oldest phonetic. The oldest writing system.
Interestingly, was basically created by women.
Yeah,
is like kanji shorthand.
Right.
So the men were expected to be hardcore enough to just write Chinese, basically.
Right.
Whereas the women were just writing their little journals and
in phonetic, basically, right?
Yeah. So they were doing like shorthand kanji, basically.
Right.
So it was basically a kanji shorthand, and I think hiragana was too, if I remember right. I think they're both.
Hiragana came out of katakana, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, probably.
But in any case, like nowadays, I'm not sure when this happened, but it's katakana specifically has become essentially a quarantine for foreign words, loan words, right? Like I don't know, biaru, or like I don't know what's another example.
Television,
terebi, I guess. Right.
In horribly distorted,
very distorted, And the funny
it's
thing
it's sort of like a quarantine where they like it's like Guantanamo Bay where they like waterboard you and cut your arms off and
until you're like barely
twist you into a stub and then
the funny thing
throw you out into your ass and then whether if you're still alive maybe
and they like expect you to understand it immediately sometimes they also like some of the loan words aren't even from English, right? Like for example, like part-time work is shorthand is baito, which I don't know is the full hand arbeito. Like, do they say arbeito here?
In Japanese to mean a part-time job. Yeah.
So they use arbeito as well, not just baito.
Yeah, it's arubaito. Yeah.
Arubaito. Okay, yeah. So and so that's of course from German.
Yeah, Arbeits,
right?
Arbeitsplatz, or Arbeitsmachtfrei or whatever. Ausschussing.
It's
a classic.
It's classic, infamous. Well, in a different word, in a different meaning.
Yeah. I'm imagining Japanese speakers like coming to that and being like part-time jobs allows you to leave Auschwitz with your life. Seems unlikely,
right?
Yeah.
Or like I was picturing the opposite.
It's not a concentration camp. It's a part-time labor camp or something, right?
Oh no! How horribly wrong you'd be. But I went in a different direction with that. I was thinking like, what would that be in katakana?
Which one?
Arbeito makuto furai.
Makudo fry. Yeah.
Sounds like McDonald's fries or something.
I'm sure that has probably happened in some weird
which is
language class or something. Yeah.
McDonald's. Yeah.
Isn't that the Osaka one though? I thought in Tokyo they just say maku, and then
I think
Osaka,
they say maku, yeah.
Osaka they do say makudo. So I think it's a bit of a regional difference.
McDonald's part-time job fry. I don't know.
Fry, yeah.
It's a bit of
it's definitely a pun. It's definitely a usable pun.
Yeah. There's something there. Still
like
workshopping
trilingual pun or something. Yeah. That's like some James Joyce level stuff, like Finnegan's Wake or something.
Right.
That's like something that would be in Finnegan's Wake. And you're trying to like figure out which sense it's supposed to be read. And it's kind of like, all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
There's no like one meaning or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, loan words, katakana, quarantine.
Yeah. Katakana is sort of I feel like the language is increasingly unavoidably heading in the katakana direction, because it's just sucking up so much from English.
Just more and more loan words, basically.
Yeah, I mean, especially with like IT stuff. I mean, some of them, it's like I guess you can express some. Well, there's things like even for like cigarettes, like tobacco, like there technically is kanji for it, but like most people can't be fucked to like write it. when you
Right.
can just write it easily in katakana.
But interestingly enough, I think I usually see that in hiragana, right?
Well, yeah,
Isn't that kind of
it's
funny?
old enough that
Yeah.
it can just be hiragana.
So is that the pipeline? Is it katakana, hiragana,
Yeah.
kanji, or something?
Yeah, it gains
Yeah.
respectability and then eventually gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's weird. There's kanji for more things than you would think. Like foreign countries, like even America. Like you can. I mean, you can just say
beikoku.
beikoku, and there's
Yeah.
other
Which is like, what is it? Beautiful.
Yeah.
Like beautiful
Trying to
country.
remember I think it's.
No. It's rice.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
it's
say.
rice.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
it
in
means
Chinese.
rice
They use the beautiful
character.
one.
Yeah.
In Mandarin, it's mei guo, I
Yeah.
believe, and the mei is like the beauty. Which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it was definitely. Yeah, I think it is the rice one. That's what I was gonna say. And I was
Yeah.
like, probably remembering this wrong.
Yeah. Which
but
is so weird, right? Like, why would that association be there?
weirdly, yeah. So there is kanji for like France and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just. I mean, like in practice, no one really.
They just do Fransu, right?
Yeah. Because again, it's just ease of use. But I think back in the 18th century, they're like, well, we're gonna try to dignify these countries with actual Chinese characters. And nowadays, it's just like ain't nobody got time for that. So it's kind of slipped. But
the funny thing in Mandarin, they also have loan words, but they construct them with like
using
kanji, right? Or hanzi, I believe, as they would say in Mandarin. But yeah, so I guess it kind of becomes like I can't remember what I remember seeing the one for Obama. Yeah, so like they pick out like kanji that has the readings similar to like that would sound kind of comparable, right?
I think there's a train station called Obama here, if I remember right.
In kanji
in
or
Japan? I think it is in kanji. Yeah.
Is it like named after him, or is it just
coincidental? It's just a phonetic
Oh,
coincidence. So it was very popular when he was, still president, obviously. But
yeah, there's a few of those punny locations, right? Like there's a place called Gomen, right?
Oh yeah, there's a station for that too.
Yeah. Gomen being like a kind of formal apology, basically sorry, right?
Yeah, Obama station.
That's funny. Literally, that's funny.
So it must have been seeing good business when he was when he was president, right?
Or the northernmost point. Oh, it's funny. Small. I don't know what that last one is.
Oh, it's just like Yokohama. It's the same.
Okay.
Same kind of same kanji. Yeah.
Okay, so Hama Bama. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Tell that drama to Obama and take it to Yokohama.
Yeah, or the northernmost point in Hokkaido in the north of Japan is Wakaranai.
Oh, right.
Wakanai, just
Wakanai or something. Yeah.
Which basically means I don't understand in the phonetic sense. That's what it means.
Yeah.
I think the kanji is going to actually be different though.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of silly language puns.
Having limited like phonemes kind of make like there's not really that many sounds in Japanese, so you kind of unavoidably end up with an insane amount of puns and rhymes, and
just kind of a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's in a way. I mean, there's the argument that like the annoying weird lack of rhymes and difficulty of English kind of makes it more like creative in a way or something, because it's pretty hard to rhyme. And well, if you look at like Italian or French, I don't know about Russian, but Italian and French poetry is like really so easy to rhyme that like everything is just like you're just rolling things out constantly, and there's no like you never have to like really get your head around like slant rhymes or half rhymes or whatever. So if you're like a rapper or a poet, you can just pretty much pick it up and it's not too demanding. Right. Because if you're like really trying to consistently like beat match in English or like write rhyming poetry in English, like you start getting forced. It's like that chess game. Like you start getting forced in these like weird corners where like, what else is going to be on the shelf but an elf, or or things like that, where you start getting forced in these like weird cul-de-sacs, because most of the time you can't really
start rhyming the word with itself to just
yeah. Well, they do. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's a well-known technique that
Yeah.
they kind of do from necessity. I don't know about Russian. I mean, is Russian really like rhyme heavy or?
Trying to remember. I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of the phonetic registrar, I don't know, just the selection of sounds available, I think Russian would be more constrained than English.
Oh, really?
I think so, yeah.
In terms of rhyming words?
Well, so I don't know. I haven't read enough Pushkin, I suppose, to comment.
That's a really controversial one too.
Why?
I don't know if you know about this.
Did I just
yeah
trigger the algorithm?
Yeah, it's triggered the algorithm. There's another literary rabbit hole, but have you heard of well, first of all, this is gonna be a yes, but like, have you heard of Lolita?
Of course, yeah.
Like the book,
yeah,
not just the fashion.
Sure.
Well, like Lolita was written by this writer called Vladimir Nabokov.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Rings a bell.
Like a white Russian writer.
Yeah.
So he's like, escaped in, I don't know, 1920 or 30. I'm trying to remember.
Escaped from
the Soviet Union.
Okay.
Basically, or just left, I guess.
1920, 1930.
1930 or something.
It's pretty early.
So he's one of these like really aristocratic Russians or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he took up in the U.S. and just became like a professor, and then started writing books in English, including Lolita, which became, or I guess it's actually pronounced Lolita according to him. And became quite famous and quite respected. So he released this translation of Pushkin, which is Onegin or whatever I think it's pronounced.
That's the name of the title, or
Onegin or something is the Pushkin poem, if I remember right.
What's it mean?
I'm probably butchering this. Let me.
Well, if you tell me what it means, I might be able to understand your.
Let me see if I can log this up here. It's in. Yes,
so he published the translation of a poem. Okay, so it's considered a classic. Okay, so it's called that. Okay.
Yeah.
A romance of what? Sorry. So hold on. Let me like read this just for just the name.
Yeah.
Eugene Oni.
I think it's Onegin.
Okay. Well, Evgenia.
Yeah, Evgeny, right? Yeah,
Evgenia Onegin. Yeah.
Because Eugene in Russian is Evgeny, right? Or
I guess so. Yeah.
Because I actually met someone with that name and introduced himself as Eugene, and I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Oh, it's actually Evgeny or whatever."
Yeah.
Like, okay. Well, anyway, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it's just it's like a really long poem, right?
Okay.
Like a novel in verse.
Okay. And
so now
he translated it?
So he translated it in English, and
okay.
So there's this literary critic called Edmund Wilson, who's kind of a big deal back in the day. So he reviews it, and he's like, like he starts off in the first paragraph, and he's like, like the esteemed Vladimir Nabokov is obviously a well-known multilingual novelist.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, his Russian and English skills seem to have deserted him in his translation of this Onegin book, and I'm something of a student of Russian myself, and I've taught myself the language. So he's basically trying to like check Nabokov in his own language, right?
Right.
Again, this Wilson has just like studied Russian as like a hobby,
right?
But again, Nabokov like is Russian,
right.
Grew up speaking Russian,
yeah.
So presumably he's translating. He learned English when he was like from his governess when he was like I don't know 3 or something.
Yeah.
So he's functionally a fluent English and Russian speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Wilson, I guess, probably started learning Russian from books when he was like 30 or something.
Sure. Yeah.
But he's like, Nabokov's expressions are not accurate to the Russian prosody and, Russian sense of this, right? So he's dropping all these like quite intense burns, right?
Right.
So Nabokov replies to it, and he's like, "I do not think Mr. Wilson should tell me how to speak Russian or translate." So he comes back and he just responds to all the specific points with, obviously greater greater knowledge, but
Right.
it turned into a big battle in this in the newspapers at the time, where they're like arguing this back and forth. You know, like whether it was an accurate translation or not, or because you know, which one was right, and kind of suspect Nabokov was probably right, but again, I could be wrong. But
yeah, I'd default to that assumption, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I probably wouldn't try to like school someone in a language that I've just been like side learning, and they're like a native speaker. But,
yeah, I mean, just sounded like he was looking for a fight.
It did sound like he was looking for a fight. Yeah,
yeah. So is that the Pushkin controversy?
Yeah, that's kind of this book, which well, because he accused him of like using all these like weird words that like aren't common. Because I guess this book is quite like casual, or like just like some kind of like, you know, folk poem or something. And he's like throwing in all these like dictionary bombs and stuff, or something like that. But I guess this was an issue at some point, which made this book kind of well known. Yeah. But I haven't read it, so.
Yeah, I don't think I've read it either. Yeah. Don't think I've read it either. Yeah, my Russian literature is kind of limited experience. Most recently, I read Tales of the Underground, right? Tales from the Underground.
Were you reading in Russian? Or?
No, in English. But it was funny because as I was reading it, I was basically mentally reconstructing the original Russian.
I do that with Japanese now. Like if I read something in Japanese and it's been translated
from English,
like if I read it in English, I try to mentally work back to the Japanese.
Yeah. It's funny how you can do that, because, but yeah, there's like weird words popping out. I think like in the English translation, there's a lot of like sublime, like using the word sublime, which you don't really encounter that.
It's not that unusual for a text, though. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't put that as. I think Nabokov was using like quite dictionary bombs that would seem like.
Yeah.
Is Pushkin really saying this? Or
right.
It, I mean, it was considered kind of eccentric.
Yeah.
But he probably sort of knew what he was doing.
Right.
Because, I mean, again, he's like writing, you know, high level novels in 3 languages. I mean, he's writing in French, Russian, and English. So he probably sort of knew what he was doing. But
yeah, I can only assume. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wonder for that kind of situation if you need to be a native in both, kind of native level in both.
Probably, yeah.
To do that mapping of, okay, this is like a folksy normal word in Russian, and here's the folksy normal English equivalent. Yeah.
It's interesting though. Interesting stuff though.
Yeah. Let's see here. Another 15. Another 15. Yeah. If not a bit more.
I mean, this is sort of the stuff that like used to fill newspapers, I guess. I don't know if anyone would consider this like a controversy, like someone translating something in a
incorrectly
questionable way. Yeah. Well, I mean, those Dostoevsky translations, I mean, people, I think there was some controversy about them too, because the first translator was this woman, Constance Garnett. And like they kind of, you know, the Dostoevsky books kind of blew up in her translations. But a lot of people were like, well, they're pretty liberal translations. Like she's kind of changing things and adding her own slant. And, you know, it's maybe a little bit more like, you know, 30% her, 70% Dostoevsky or something. Whereas you know, it's supposed to be like 100% Dostoevsky.
Yeah, it's quite hard to do ultimately though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nabokov did comment on her too. He was like, you know, but if I remember right, like I think he didn't really like Dostoevsky. So he said something like Mrs. Garnett is like better than Dostoevsky, or I get because he's trying to like diss him or something. I mean, he's obviously familiar with the original, but I think he just like didn't really like Dostoevsky. So called him a journalist, like a bleeding heart journalist or something.
Bleeding heart,
which I guess was a pretty sick burn
back in the day.
I guess, yeah.
Sometimes you'll find a song where the remix is better than the original.
Yeah.
Though, so
well, that's the translation issue.
Yeah.
Like Baudelaire, the French poet, translated Edgar Allan Poe into French, and And yeah, it's the same thing. Like people think that it's better in French. Like even native English speakers that have read the French are like, oh, it's kind of better.
Just like
in
more
French.
like lyrical or
Yeah,
poetic
like
or
just,
something.
I guess just even his stories kind of fit it better.
Yeah.
So that's one case where like people are seriously, again, like Poe is like a pretty famous writer,
Right.
so it's not just like some minor writer.
Right.
But they're like, oh yeah, Baudelaire actually kind of made it like even better in his French, in his French version.
It's cool. Yeah. It's cool that can be done.
Yeah,
I guess.
But I guess the issue is that like Dostoevsky wasn't. I mean, I'm just going on Nabokov here. Like I haven't obviously read it in Russian, but apparently he's like quite a loose writer. Like he doesn't really, he just kind of like hammers stuff out and gets it down. And Nabokov is like very, craftsman. Like he's trying to like fine tool everything, or like fine tune, like balance everything and perfect it.
Dostoevsky was kind of shooting from the hip.
Yeah. According to Nabokov,
well, he was paid per word.
Well, exactly.
Right?
So that was the other issue with a lot of these 19th century writers. Like they're just trying to make word count so they could, get paid, so you eat or whatever.
Don't know how hard they were balling out.
Yeah. So
was War and Peace also Dostoevsky?
It was Tolstoy.
Okay,
it was controversial
that was
for
right?
other reasons.
Yeah,
he's just a land-owning count who had children with his servants and kind of
naughty.
Yeah, I don't know. He's unpopular for various reasons.
It's
primarily for being a count. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, well, he tried to like go this like real super Christian, give it all away route towards the end. But I think he still had
as
his
a Hail Mary.
Yeah, I think I don't think if I remember right, he didn't fully give up his servants or something. It's, yeah, I mean, it's easy to be. I guess it's easy to be living a monk-like lifestyle if your servants are still kind of bringing you shit.
Right, running the whole show basically.
Running the show, yeah. But those are enormous bricks too. Those Tolstoy things, which I haven't really read either. I never really got so into Russian writing. Weirdly enough.
Why is that weird? I think that'd be pretty common for most people. It's
pretty.
Right? It's well regarded, I guess, or it's kind of
well regarded,
universally acclaimed. Yeah, acclaimed. I don't know. Yeah. Universally significant.
Significant. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last one I read was actually a Soviet. These brothers called the Strugatsky brothers.
Okay.
It's like science fiction. Called Roadside Picnic, which is a really, really worthwhile.
Was this the yellow book?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a Tarkovsky film called Stalker that's based on it. But it's really, really strange and really interesting, and really, I want to say like Soviet too. Like it's weirdly enough, it's actually set in Canada.
Okay.
But it's written in Russian by Soviet era writers, but it takes place in Canada
with Canadian people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty bizarre.
And there's like one Russian character.
Okay.
For some reason, but yeah, really, really interesting, strange book. Don't know if we have time to go into the details, but definitely a book I think everyone should read, and really unexpected. Roadside Picnic. Yeah. Basically, just the summary. One-line summary is just aliens visit the Earth, but they don't stick around. No one sees them, and they just leave their garbage. And their garbage turns out to be like technology that's like beyond like stuff we can even imagine.
Right.
So it's just it seems like it's just junk they left behind.
Right.
But like from our perspective, like one little piece of it can like produce unlimited energy forever, or like
right.
I don't know, blow up a star. Like it's just things that like make no sense, and there's no way to understand what they're gonna do. It's totally unsafe, right? But it's only in this one little area. So there's people that like sneak into it and try to make their way out with it, so they can sell it. That's kind of the story. It goes in interesting directions from there.
Interesting.
But, definitely worth picking up.
Yeah.
But that's the last originally Russian book I think I read. I'm trying to remember the one before that was probably much.
My Russian literature, aside from Tales from the Underground, basically begins and ends at what's it called? It's called like Denis's stories.
Denis's stories.
Yeah, Deniskины рассказы. Which
it's not ringing a bell.
No, it's like a child's. I know it's
a children's
kind
book?
of like Hardy Boys or something. Even earlier than that.
Yeah, it's not like Dennis the Menace or something, is it? Or?
No, I mean there are some menacing aspects, I guess. Like one of the stories that's probably like most famous is his mom's making him eat porridge. He doesn't want to eat porridge, and so he like dumps it out the window when she's not paying attention. And then like there's a knock on the door a few minutes later, and it's like the neighbor covered in porridge.
Okay, I thought you were gonna say it's like Satan or something. No. It sounds like there's these like German fairy tales where like some little kid does that, and then instead of being the neighbor, it's like Satan, and he like cuts the kid's fingers off, and then like nails him to a tree or something. Like there's these like German fairy tales where like little kids are like punished in nightmarish Hellraiser kind of ways, and I don't know.
That's that kind of Hansel and Gretel stuff, right?
Well, those ones too, but there's some of these like more. Can't remember the name, but there's this one famous German fairy tale book.
Yeah, I vaguely.
Where, kids are getting their fingers cut off and burned, and nailed to trees. I don't know, just like horrible, way out of proportion
stuff. Yeah,
way out of proportion things, which.
Nah, this wasn't like that.
Yeah, it wasn't that intense.
No, this was like, I know, 9 to 12-year-old kind of coming of age stories.
Okay, yeah.
Pretty lighthearted overall, but maybe some mischievous elements to it.
But nothing like traumatizing.
No mutilation.
No mutilation. No. I think people were like literally traumatized by that German kids book or whatever.
Right.
Some of those ones where Grimm's Tales or whatever. How are we doing for time? We almost
just gotta land the plane here. Last 10 minutes or so.
Last 10 minutes, yeah.
We're a bit late with this episode due to some. Yeah, I guess we could talk about that.
How was this festival you went to?
Yeah, so it was quite cool. It was the Labyrinth, organized by this company called Mind Games, and every year it's basically a techno festival in the mountains of Gunma, Mount Hodaigi, I believe specifically. It's essentially a ski resort. It's like a ski town area, probably like 2.5-3 hours outside of Tokyo. This was my first year attending at the invitation of Matteo, a mutual friend of ours. Yeah. I guess I should say a friend I met through Justin specifically.
Right.
Yeah, so it's pretty out there, and getting out there was a bit intense. I went by motorcycle, which it's not the purpose my motorcycle was designed for, but yeah, getting out there, setting up camp in the dark, immediately lose my flashlight.
Oh, right.
That I bought for this event specifically. Not too expensive, but kind of just annoying. Retrace my steps, find someone else's flashlight, trade the universe for it, basically.
But this is there's a fair amount of people in this, right?
It's about 2,000.
Oh, 2,000. That's crazy.
It feels a lot more intimate, though. There's only one stage, basically.
It's a lot of people, man.
It's a lot of people.
Certainly, you must have to like really clear space for this, right? 2,000 people.
Man, it feels it's like it's packed, but it's designed like there's enough space. Basically, it's not like claustrophobic or anything.
Well, it is Gunma, right? So it is pretty out there, but yeah.
But yeah, no, like I didn't notice particularly that much traffic getting out there or anything. It didn't really seem to tax the local infrastructure much at all. But yeah, it was very cool. I mean, you saw the setup. They kind of have some Yeah, lots of cool decorations and sculptures, and I guess you'd say kinetic sculptures. And well, yeah, I mean, the best thing probably is the sound system
Yeah.
is like very well designed. Essentially, they have, I don't know how many speakers, like
Right.
ballpark, let's say 30 speakers
Oh shit. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
formation. They have like two cranes that are like
Mm.
hoisting the main two kind of treble speakers.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, just from an audio engineering perspective, it's quite cool in that
Yeah. That's what
the
I've heard. Right. I've heard it's quite intense.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
but like the volume's the same like everywhere on the dance floor,
Mm.
dance area, I guess you
Yeah.
could say. Yeah, like immediately on the first night, I was like, wow, this is like quite exceptional because of how crisp the trebles
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
Like the other music festival, Rainbow Disco Club, that I went to in April, also at Mateo's invitation, was yeah, like very bassy. Just I don't know,
It's like thumping around everywhere.
yeah, it's just like okay, like cool party time. I
Yeah.
don't know, but
Like thump.
yeah,
That's it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah. So Labyrinth was they clearly cared about audio quality, and yeah,
That's what I've heard. Yeah. He's told me that before.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to make it out because I just had too many other commitments and
Yeah.
stuff already. Like some friends are visiting
Yeah.
Tokyo, as they basically are every weekend in this year.
Right.
Sorry to people that are still in the wings. Like it's just been like the calendar year where like someone. I was reading a Reddit thread about this today, and it was just kind of it's just matching my experience because this year is just feels like every other weekend someone's rocking up, and people like cool people are welcome, but it's like we're like. I guess like the tour guide burnout is kind of real too.
Yeah.
Right? We're just like inundated with people constantly. But yeah.
I need to still need to find time to do all the stuff that you've kind of prioritized as well, right? Yeah. But lots of good techno. Quite enjoyed the music even. But I think, as I said before, yeah, if you're not that into the music, I would almost say it's maybe not really that worth it, especially if it's raining.
Right. Yeah.
It was very sunny this year and was very ideal
nice
conditions. Yeah. Cool people. Lots of Japanese people smoking funny looking cigarettes in front of their kids as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was very, very different culture, I guess, from what I'm used to in Tokyo. So nice to see that aspect in Japan. So Labyrinth, if you're into techno, check it out in Japan. A few more minutes here.
I think what are we at, an hour?
We're at 58 minutes.
58. We're gonna push to 1 hour.
Yeah, well, let's give it a few minutes
more,
here. Do you still want to record the next episode immediately after this?
Maybe tomorrow. I think we should
tomorrow.
I think we should do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
This is coming out on Friday, and we're both just like burned to the wire.
Trying to think here.
Even kind of fighting off a bit of a cold.
Do you think we've like boxed ourselves in with the topics we've discussed, or how are you feeling about this podcast
tonight? This one,
yeah.
I think we went all over the place. I'm trying to remember what we even.
It was a lot of language. So
it was some language.
That was kind of
stuff
the main
discussed.
thing.
But I think there's other. I feel like we did kind of go over. It was pretty language focused.
Language, literary. Yeah. It was mostly that, to be honest.
Interesting word kind of stuff that came out. If I always forget what we've talked about and haven't. I mean, there's a few things that come up, but I can usually never remember which one has which content, or like which ones we were talking about, like G.I. Joe or some other random things that come up. But
the funny thing is, in podcasts with loyal followings, it's usually some listeners that become the encyclopedias of what was said in what episode.
Oh, right? Really? They're like noting it down.
Yeah.
Some. I mean, there has been response. I mean, I know you're like kind of waiting on the YouTube comments. like and respond. What if people say like? They have these like weird
Like and subscribe.
Smash the
smash
the
that
clitoris. And then
smash that like button.
Like and subscribe button.
Yeah.
And leave some comments if you're.
Well,
watching.
it's two separate buttons, so smash them both.
Yeah, smash them both. But people are weirdly like a lot of people have privately messaged me about watching it and
yeah, I'm glad
picking up on some things and
I'm glad
similar topics. Someone messaged me about. Trying to remember. Oh, I'm trying to. I have to check it out here. What I can't remember what they were replying to. It was a few days. Oh, I think he's just messaging me now. Actually. Oh, Sherlock Holmes. Yeah, there was. He was talking about the origin of the hat and the pipe and Elementary. My dear, like I guess this was all created by an actor. In like 1914 or something.
Right.
And I don't know, just completely random information, which I definitely wasn't familiar with. But
well, yeah, I mean, look, Justin's not familiar with it. I'm not familiar with it. Someone else listening to the podcast isn't familiar with it either. Put it in the comments. Like, I'm sure everyone would kind of benefit from that level of.
Yeah.
You know, I'm seeing peripherally the block of text posted. Like, it's clearly a well thought out response here.
Fair amount
right?
of text. Yeah. There's people that are commenting on some other.
Drop it in the comments.
Drop it down.
Happy to see people engaging.
Yeah. I've probably butchered some of the pronunciations of things in this one too.
Yeah, I mean,
trying to remember.
I think getting stuff wrong and mispronouncing stuff is actually the best way to get engagement.
Yeah.
Just make
People want to correct things.
Right.
Yeah.
So
in 1976, when Gerald Ford was president and Lady Bird Johnson was vice president,
right?
Or something like that, right?
Oh man, that voice crack too. Yeah. So maybe I should start to dropping more misinformation.
I think we're gonna have to call it because my voice is
landing this.
Cracking into a million fragments here.
Instagram, DBLV, and I'll let you do yours too. I forget which one. What is it? Justin Isis
93
on Instagram.
And Instagram, that's the one. Yeah.
And Justin Isis 1 on
Twitter,
X
or X or whatever.
Yeah.
I still call it Twitter, even though it's not really.
Yeah, I'm sure either is fine. But sorry this was late. Still staying on top of it.
Peace
Have
out.
a good week. See you later.
Peace.